Hello again, this is Professor Mike Sloan from the Lawrence Kinlan School of Business, your voice in the videos for Comp 3077 online. And for our face-to-face sections that are using these videos for a little bit of extra help, welcome to you as well. I may not be your online professor for the section that you're in, but I will always be the voice in the videos. And this is, again, a required video. I did want to mention something really quick right off the top here. My slide titles I noticed in the video from last week, in our week 2 video, I think in both of them, they still said week 1 at the top. I apologize for that. I always tell my presentation students never apologize because 99% of the time people don't notice if you mix something up, but I just didn't want anybody to be confused. That was just a clerical error. I'm not going to go back and redo and like clip out the front of the video and redo that part. It's just because it doesn't change the content and the delivery of the concepts to you. That was tip top, of course. So I just wanted to mention that. You can ignore that. I'll try not to do that again. We are in week 3 now, and it says week 3. And I'm going to give you a few general tips and reminders before we jump into the case. Just sometimes I do the lecture, which I did last week, and then I'll do some live lectures. And there's just some things I was sort of regretting not reminding you more about. Just this list right here. And before we do that, we're going to talk about getting your book, which I again want to bring up. And if you're watching this in a semester any later than the fall of 2025, the end of 2025, and you already bought MindTap for this course, you will not have to buy it again. If you're in this course in the fall of 2025, as I already explained in the initial video, anything you've purchased for this course prior to fall of 2025 is not going to work. You do need to buy the resources. And if you've never taken the course before in a later semester, same thing, you got to buy the resources. So it is free for the first 2 weeks, and I know it's been nice to have it for free for the first 2 weeks, but it's time to get it, because if you don't get it by the time you meet in week 3, if you're face-to-face or if you're in an online section, I'm not sure when the professors would have set the exact start date for the course, but you're going to be running out of your free access very soon here, and you want to make sure you get your work in by the weekly deadline. So you can walk into the bookstore and buy it right in the bookstore, or you can just click the link here, which will take you to the bookstore's website. You can also buy it from the publisher's website if you have the right ISBN here, but I don't generally direct people there because the price seems to fluctuate a lot, and you're getting your best price from Fanshawe. So it should be around $106. It may fluctuate from term to term, could be up a few bucks, down a few bucks, whatever, but you can buy it here. And when you're buying from the bookstore, once you purchase it, either from here on this page that we link to, from where it's just in course information, required resources and FOL, or you go into the bookstore and buy it, excuse me, you will have to redeem this code they put on the receipt. So they don't actually put the MindTap access code on the receipt. I don't know. I don't know why they do that. Security reasons, whatever. So once you get your bookstore receipt, you go in here and you put the redemption code in there, and then you'll get the access code, which of course, once you get that from here, is what you need when you log into Cengage. So now, I still haven't quite run out yet in the dummy student account I made. So when I sign in and you sign account.cengage.com, same place every week, you're going to sign in and you're going to see your MindTap resources there for the course. That's what gets you into MindTap and then into SAM. I only have 2 days left on the section that I created here. Let me just grab a drink. My throat is just a bit scratchy today, and that'll happen once in a while in these videos. I still got to do the videos because when I first record them, each time I redo the course, this will be, I think, the 5th time I've done this big collection of videos. I need to keep them going in a timely fashion because for the very first semester, the students are getting the videos as I record them. And eventually I'll get ahead and catch up, but I won't need to be playing catch up. I'm not now, but anyway. So you get logged in. I'm in a student account just like yours. You go in here and it's going to keep asking for your access code until you have it. And that's what you purchase at the page I was just showing you. And once you put the access code in there, then this will never come up again. Even after your temporary access expires, until you put the access code in there, it will then continue to ask you for it and won't let you in once it expires. So one more time, I'm going to continue with temporary access. You guys in week 3 will probably have to have purchased it by then, which means it'll go directly to this screen, which from this video forward, starting in week 4, this is where I'm going to start. I will already be logged in and I'll just start here and go right to the case just to save a little bit of time at the top of the videos. So there's that. Don't forget to get your resources. And if I jump back to the slide over here, I also wanted to remind you, and this is just a nice, easy way. There's several different ways to rename the file when you're downloading it. And you can right-click rename. You can kind of do a long click on it. I'm pretty sure you can do the same thing on a Mac, and you do that on a PC as well. If you have the function keys on your keyboard, which a lot of you on laptops may not, you know, all those F keys across the top, the F2 function key will allow you to rename it, which is generally a lot of people that have worked in an office setting and spent a lot of time with files, that's the quickest way. So it's just one of those little things, those extra things I like to teach you. I think I might have mentioned it in the first video. I just wanted to remind you. I also wanted to remind you about right-clicking. And I have the week 2 case open here to, like last week when we did rotation, for example. And I'm always encouraging you to work from the ribbon, because if you don't see what you need on the ribbon, then you can expand into the dialog box and it'll take you right to where you'd be working with in that particular area of the ribbon, right to that tab in the window. And that's where we did the rotation there and put it at 90 degrees, which it's not showing 90 because I highlighted all the way down to there. Actually, it'll be 90 when I do this here. So the other way to do that, and I mentioned this a bit at the beginning of the course, but I want to encourage you to keep, if you know you're not going to find what you find here on this menu, like with that date format, you can just right click right away and go into format cells, and it'll usually take you to the last tab you were on. For date format, you'd be here and you'd go to date. So you can get into so much stuff by right clicking on a cell and right clicking on an object. And when we start doing charts, you can right click on all the objects. So I just wanted to remind you that right clicking is also a nice tool. Another thing that happened in week 2, which I didn't feel like I spent a ton of time on it when we opened up at the very end the header footer menu, and we were there, header footer, not word art, and we were bouncing back and forth between header footer. You probably noticed, and I obviously drew your attention to it, as soon as you were in there, it brought up this additional tab in the ribbon, so this additional menu. And you're going to encounter this a lot with Excel, the same way you do in Word when you're working with a picture and you sit on the picture and all the picture options are there in that new menu, and then you click off the picture and then they're gone. The menu's still there, but as soon as I click out of the header footer, even though I'm in page layout view now and you can still see the header, that menu's gone. As soon as I click back in the header or I go to the footer, either one, you have that header footer menu. So it's just a way of Microsoft, they're trying to clean up the main menu tabs that you need and not have them on all the time unless you're using that thing. So you will encounter more of that stuff as we move further ahead in the course, like several examples, I think, in week 5, where we have these menus that come up when you're doing charts and tables and all these things. And then when you click off the object, the menu goes away. It doesn't mean it's gone. It's back as soon as you click back in the object. So if I click back on a worksheet now, it's gone. So I just wanted to show you that as well. I just felt like I kind of blew over that a little too quickly. And finally, okay, so there was a whole bunch of not complaining, I shouldn't say that. There was a bit of struggling with the date format last week, and I want to go back to that section of my videos. Let's go to normal layout here so they wanted this date specifically formatted with the US style formatting, where you can do 2-digit day, 2-digit month, 2-digit year. And I spend a lot of time in the video explaining like how to pull this up, that if you go to the home tab when a date's already in, so somebody already put the date in, okay, the date is in. And when you go to the home, and again, if you don't need this review, you can use the chapters and skip right to the beginning of the week 3 case. This is just something I wanted to have in the video to explain this a bit more. There were no there was no wording or language in the instructions that said type in this date format. When there's something that's already in the cell and it asks you to format, you go and find the format. And if you didn't find the format here, you went and found the format in here. Now, if you didn't have English United States, I explained how you could still get this correct by using the drop down and choosing English United States, at which point this option would have come up and you could have made it formatted like that. What I'm hearing, not just the online students, but I saw some of my students doing this in lab, they got to that step and they went to the instructions and just typed in what they saw in the instructions, and it didn't say to do that. So there's a couple issues with that. Number one is, even if you have the same language settings as me, depending on your holistic system settings, you might have slashes instead of dashes. You might not even have dashes. And then if you type in dashes, the system doesn't know what to do with it, and it recognizes it as text. And the other issue with that is, even if you type in the right character, slashes or dashes, if your language settings don't recognize that series of digits as a date format, then it just becomes not even a date anymore. So another tip to get around this, if you were to have to type in a date, even though you're not typing in a date there, you weren't supposed to type in anything, you just format it. Anytime you want to know what the raw date format is, you don't, and you're going to run into this in later cases in SAM, they'll always give you this US version of the date, but you never type that in. What you would type in instead, what is this? April? No, this is May 4th, 2029. So you would type May 4th, comma, space, 2029. This is called the long date. Now, when I type that in and hit enter, you see it goes right back exactly to the format that I'd set for that date. Because that wasn't inputting any data, that was just setting the format. But the easiest way to avoid any issues when you're inputting dates, which you weren't even doing in week 2, you were just supposed to format it. But when you're asked to input dates in later cases, ignore what you see in the SAM step. And don't worry, my videos will make it very clear that's what you're supposed to do, and my lectures. Ignore what it says to type in and just type in the long date, which is always the name of the month, space day, comma, space, and the year. It's the same, no matter what your language settings are, it will then know it's a date and format it however you had the date formatting set up in that cell. But that, you weren't supposed to type anything in week 2. You were just supposed to format it. And you can go back to my section of the video there in the chapters and watch that step so you see exactly what I'm doing. Now, if you want to avoid as much as you can with any kind of weird, I wouldn't call it glitchy. It's not glitchy. It's the reason some of you couldn't find this is because you weren't following my instructions and going in the drop down to get to English United States. And the reason some of you then subsequently got the accounting format incorrect is because the only way to get that right is to switch your actual system language to English United States. So I'm just reminding you one last time, please do this before the first test. And there are instructions. So now we're dealing with language settings. So the slashes versus dashes. If you go into FOL, we're going to get out of required resources here. Go back to table of contents. It's in both the week 1 and the week 2 module items, like just that top item that tells you what's going on that week. So if we jump back to week 2 and we look, go week 2. Oh, I'm on campus. That shouldn't be that slow. And you go in there and the same exact instructions were in week 1, where it tells you exactly, just in text, how to do this on your PC or Mac. And these are updated instructions as of fall 2025. I doubt much will change as the years go on here. You can also look it up on YouTube. It's not that hard to do. You go into like the main Windows settings and the main Mac OS settings, and you change your system language to English United States, because if you bought your computer in Canada, it's probably English Canada. And then when you open up Excel, it should be set that way, and you won't have any more of these minor language issues. And those are all the little things I wanted to cover. And that took a lot more than 5 minutes. Sorry about that, but it's just, there's some stuff. I just want to make the course easier for you guys. And understanding what's happening and learning little tips like that, that's a good thing. So let's get into the week 3 case. And that'll be 14 minutes. We're into the week 3 case. That's not too bad. This one isn't actually quite as long as last week, even though it involves some more heavy duty stuff. And I would always recommend going into FOL first, check the week 3 module, see what we're covering, see what learning outcomes it covers, module learning outcomes. Oh, wow, we're doing some new stuff here. So there's a bunch of advanced functions in here that we haven't tried before, and that's fine. I'm going to show you that this stuff is not as complicated as you think. You just have to understand what the functions are doing. So speaking of doing, without further ado, now that we know what we're doing in week 3, let's go into SAM, grab the week 3 case, click on the case. It will open up SAM. That's how your cases are downloaded and then subsequently graded. You guys know the drill by now. 2 submissions. Make sure you close your file and have it saved before you go. Let's hit start. And you download your instruction file and your start file. You will, in later weeks, start to see situations where we have multiple start files, where you have a start file and then you have some support files. And that maybe is where you start using the download all button. I still think it's easier just to avoid any pop-up blockers or anything, just to grab each file separately. And before I even open the instructions, once I grab the Excel file, I'm going to immediately go and rename it because it is the same exact thing every week. In fact, as I'm saving it, I can rename it. That's another way you can rename it, in addition to using the F2 function key on your keyboard just to speed it up a bit. I can rename it right now. And remember, if you don't see the XLSX because of your computer settings, that's fine. You don't type it in. If you see it, that's fine too. You don't mess with it, you leave it. And we click save. And another reminder too, and I don't have to put this in my list of reminders, but you probably noticed in my downloads, I had this stuff from last week there. This is only showing today, so it's clean, but you don't need to really save all those files, because if you ever want to go back and review what you did in a previous case file, this one we're about to do being a good one, because this one involves some advanced functions, and all the tests you take in this course are open book. So you could go back and open the file up in the test and look at how you did those functions. All you have to do is go to reports, and you'll always be able to get your file in reports from Sam. So when I want to look at my reports here, I'll just show you. It's because I'm in a student account right now. So I'm going to X out of the assignment screen just for a second here. And if I go, you don't need to be in gradebook. So gradebook will just show your marks. I don't think you can download your reports from here. Maybe you can. Yeah, so no, so this just shows your marks, okay? But if you click back on Sam separately from clicking on the assignment, and the only reason you'd ever do this actually is to look at your reports. And then I'll maximize it. It just has reports. That's all it has. So I showed this in the first video as well. I just wanted to remind you that's there, because most students probably won't bother going into Sam individually other than to get their report immediately when they submit it. And that's still on the assignment screen, so they don't have to really go into Sam. So I just wanted to remind you of that too. I am actually going to add that into that slide really quick here. So there you go. I added one more bullet into the bottom there of my sort of initial review slide. And now officially we are starting the case. So we're going to do the case demo. Few things to watch out for. We are stepping it up in terms of difficulty. Just please follow along. We're going to do some advanced functions. We're going to do nesting, where we have functions in functions. And we're going to do absolute versus relative referencing. So as I get into week 3, I start to lecture a little more direct to the step and a little less about the Excel basics. So the videos, even though they get more difficult, or the cases, I should say, the videos for the cases don't end up being much longer. So maybe that's a good thing, considering we're just starting the case now at 18 minutes and change. But I did want to show you all those things. So I'm going to open up my 2 files. I've already renamed the start file, so I don't have to worry about that. And I can just go right to instruction 1 and we'll get started. Open. Okay, as always, click enable editing in the Excel file, and you'll want to do that in the Word file too, in case there's anything you want to cut and paste. It's just easier to navigate the file. Just when you download from the web, usually you're going to have to do that. So I've got the file open right from the top. Let's start with step 1. Latrice Ramsey is a financial analyst for ProGear in Jersey City, Jersey City, New Jersey. The company manufactures equipment and clothing for professional sports teams, analyzing shipping and sales data. So this is often where Excel comes in handy a lot. Like it's very handy for this type of stuff, especially if you want to determine shipping based on package size and weight. And if it's this big, it's going to be that much. If it's bigger, it's going to be that much. And hence why we're going to use a function called if in today's case. To start with, though, we're just doing some really simple math. So I want to remind you once again, as I taught you in week 1, when you're doing one cell minus another, you never need to put it inside the parentheses of a sum function. All you need is the equal sign, and you can do a basic mathematical formula. They want you to go to cell F10 in the shipping analysis worksheet. So we haven't even left the documentation sheet yet. And once you get there, you are going to subtract a date from a date. Interesting. And that does work. And I've had to do this many times. And if you don't format the destination cell where you're doing the math as a date, it should give you a number, which would be the difference in days. Make sure you put this in the right order too. It may not necessarily be in the order they give it to you in the step. So it says in cell F10, create a formula without using a function. That just means you just one thing minus another. It subtracts the shipping date, D10, from the delivery date. And that's going to tell you how long it was in transit for. For which, how long it was in transit. Ooh, grammar. So let's go. Alt tab. So we're going to, so make sure your name's in there. Shipping analysis. We are going to F10. So let's go to F and over to 10. There's no grid lines here. I might not even, you know what? You want to be safe? Type it in the name box. You'll know you're in there. So F10 is down here. And I'm going to take the shipping date from the delivery date. So E10 minus D10. Notice it's not, it's in E10's first because this is being taken from that. E10 minus D10. You hit enter and you get 4. That was only in transit for 4 days. That's pretty good. Use the fill handle all the way down the table to do the same formula up to F36. So you haven't had to do this since week 1. You don't really want to copy paste. It would still work, but I'm going to zoom down a bit just so you can see it all. This is better. So the fill handle essentially is copying what's in the cell. And if you click just the little cube there and drag, that would be using the fill handle. And then you unclick when you get to F36 and you filled. So that's a little bit of review from week 1. That's all that was. One thing minus another and copy the same formula down into a bunch of cells. Again, you do not see a sum function there, regardless of what your high school teachers taught you. You do not need to put basic math within the parentheses of a sum function. All you need is the equal sign. In fact, one of the simplest formulas you can even do, which isn't even math, is if you want something in this cell to appear that is just something that's sitting in another cell, it's literally just equals that cell, equals A5. It's the pointing to a cell. It's the simplest formula you can do in Excel. That was number 1. Number 2, if the shipper completed the delivery in 2 days or less, they can bill ProGear a surcharge of $14 per shipment. Sure how that works. Calculate the total shipping charges as follows. So right now we are going to do an if function. Okay, and I have an example set up so I can give you first a really simple example of an if function. And then we're going to go in and do this one because this is an if function that actually involves additional formulas in the function. So let's check out the example. So here's the example I want to show you. So every time I export your quiz marks in SAM, so these are the SAM quiz marks from MindTap, I am then going to put them into FOL as pass-fail. So you should all know at this point, we did our first SAM quiz last week. We started the SAM quizzes in week 2. These are pass-fail with a 70% passing threshold. And you can take them as many times as you want. But if you don't get a 70, you're not. So a lot of students just think they're going to get credit by trying it, and they haven't read the instructions or they missed week 2, I don't know, weeks 1 through 3. So they get these marks that aren't good enough. But I don't even look at the marks. There's no discriminating here. I literally just want to scroll through this and make anything that's below a 70 a 0 and anything that's above a 70 a 100, because that's how I want to do it. So I can do this with a function called if. So this opens up a whole new realm of using functions in Excel, because as soon as we leave the simplest functions that we've been using for the first couple weeks, average, sum, obviously, sum, average, min, max, count, like the ones that are in the auto sum dropdown, and count A, same thing. These are just single input functions. There's literally only one field you would put stuff in. What you're averaging, what you're counting, what the range you're searching for the max or the minimum in. This is a function where we have multiple inputs. So as soon as you get past these basic functions, you're going to want to use what we refer to as the function wizard. So now we're going to leave the home tab and go to formulas. Now you're just watching now. We're not doing this step yet. You're just watching what I'm doing. And if as a function is in the category logical. So logical testing has to do with sending queries into Excel, like asking it questions. Hey, go check out this cell and tell me what's going on there. So anytime you're asking it stuff like that, you would be in the logical category. There's all kinds of financial stuff that's really good. You can put interest rates in and the time of the loan and all this stuff and see exactly what you're going to pay. There's lookup functions that'll go and find something but return a value based on it. It's not just going to, it's a little bit different than an if function. If function is trying to determine something about something in a cell. Lookup functions are just finding something and then returning a value based on where that something they found is located in another place. So I'll teach you more about that when we do that step in a minute. But all these functions are here and they're categorized. What's funny is that I don't think that's the fastest way to pull these functions up. This is a good place to go if you're searching for a function and you're not sure what you want, and you can start looking in the categories, because there are functions for everything in Excel. Like even if you go in here, the statistical stuff we're going to use in later cases, that's really useful. But this is just a function called if that's going to go and find, determine something in a cell. Is it greater than, is it less than, is it equal to something, greater than or equal to or less than? And I know the function is if, so I'm just going to type in equals if on my keyboard and type the first parenthesis. And then if I want to get into that function wizard that I was talking about, I can just click the FX. A lot of people don't even know you can do that after using Excel for years. They think you have to go to the place where the function is, and you can go and insert function from here and just find it by showing all, right? You don't have to know what category it's in. And if I show all, and then I go and I type if, and I hit the enter key, it'll bring it right up. And I click OK, and it shows me those fields right away. So this is what I was talking about, the function wizard. You can also go right in here and pull it up, and it'll pull up the function wizard. What I'm saying is, however you pull this up, as soon as you're past the point of doing those single input, really simple functions from week 2, you should always pull up the function wizard. And the easiest way to do that, I would argue, is literally just sitting in the cell, typing the function, and it always auto-completes down here. So even if it's a longer name, and then you can double click and it puts the parenthesis in for you. And then you do not build from here. As soon as you get the function in, you click this little FX and it pulls up the function wizard. So to give you an example of what if does, what I want to do is I want to check what's in the, and it's usually a cell that's right beside it or above it or somewhere close to it. You're going to input that cell and you're going to ask if it is greater than or equal to 70. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to make the mark suitable for a pass-fail evaluation in FOL. So by asking it that question, if it is true, I make the mark 100, and if it's not, I make the mark a 0. And I could also put the number in there and it would still work fine, but we know from week 1, we only use cell references, and then we can scroll through. So is it greater than or equal to 70? And you can do less than, you can do equal than, and greater than. How did I remember that? That's alligator hungry, remember? In elementary school, the math, when we learned the equality signs. So it's greater than, less than, equal to, greater than, equal to, less than, or equal to. So you can do any of these combination of equality signs or equality signs. And you can actually ask if it's just equal to, you can ask if it equals text, right? And you just have to put it in quotes. Whenever you have wording in the test for an if function, you have to put it in quotes. Same if it's the answer, you have to put it in quotes. So I'm just giving you a bunch of tips here, but this is a really simple one. Is this cell that I clicked on over there greater than or equal to a 70? And I hit enter, and it's not, so that person gets a 0. And if I scroll down, just like how I've been scrolling down these other formulas and stuff, it will update that cell for me every time. And you could see how that works. And even a 69, it's a 0. It's either a 70 or higher. And then I take these numbers that I just calculated using the if function. I right click, I paste values only. I get rid of that column altogether, and then I can upload that into FOL. So that's a really common use for an if function for grading for teachers. We often, when we have pass-fail stuff or things that fall into certain categories and stuff like that. So now we will go back over to the, we will go back over to the step and actually complete it. So this is going to be a bit of a longer video, but again, I want to remind you to use the, here I can close what I was just using as an example, to use the chapters, but I'm guessing most of you needed that example on the if function. So there, we're back up on the screen. If the shipper completed the delivery in 2 days or less, they can bill ProGear a surcharge of $14. So calculate the total shipping charges as follows. So in cell H10, so let's go to H10 first and foremost. So we're there, H10. We are going to insert a formula using an if function. So this is how I would do it. As soon as you see something you know you can do, stop reading and go do it. So now I'm going to go equals if parenthesis, pull up the function wizard, and now I'm going to go keep reading so I know what to put in those boxes. Okay, now another cool thing about the function wizard, I'll point out to you now, since the last thing we were doing was really simple, but each box you sit in for any function, when you're using the function wizard, will then come up, like each of these fields, boxes, whatever, it'll come up down here with an explanation of what goes in there. So the logical test is anything that can be evaluated true or false, yes or no. Is something greater than this? Is it less than this? So it's like that. And we're going to switch over here. And in cell H10, in a form that tests whether the number of days in transit, so F10, so the one we just calculated, is less than 2. So in the field for what you're checking, so the logical test, you're going to go and ask it, is this cell less than, so now we're the other way, right? Alligator not so hungry. Less than, so with the arrow pointing in toward it, or equal to 2. So did they make it in 2 days or even beat 2 days? And if they did, let's jump back over here, you're going to pay them a bit more. You're going to actually add $14 to the standard shipping charge, which happens to be in G10. So what you're going to do here is actually a minor calculation. You can even have an entire sum function inside here. You could put it, you just don't need the equal sign because you already have the equal sign in front of the if function. If you're going to run a sum function inside of another function, you just need to type out sum and put the function. This is just one thing plus another. So you don't need a sum function. You just go G10 and you add 14 to it. So if they beat 2 days, so you're going to see these guys will get more money for shipping, right? If they beat 2 days down here. There's not a lot of them that were shipped that quickly, but there's some. And then click in the next box. So you always want to make sure you click in the next box. Otherwise, you're adding to the stuff that's in the previous box, and you can just backspace it and go and click in the next box. So if they didn't beat it, it's simply just the charge that's already in G10, which you can just get to repeat there by just putting in G10. Again, you don't need equals G10 because it resolves that. It's doing that for you within the function G10. So this is not an overly complicated if function. It's a great one to start with. We're going to have some heavier stuff in week 9, but it's a great one to start with because it shows you that you can do math inside the return values. You can also have words in there, as I explained in my demo, stuff like that. So once you click OK, it should end up at 810, which is simply that number. And there shouldn't be, I mean, literally, and this is these videos when I start doing complicated functions, these are the times when I have this up, you can pause the video and just make sure your stuff's the same. And once you're done, you scroll it down just like we did when we did the function in the F column, the formula actually, that wasn't a function. And you could see the ones, if you check a couple, here's one that was done in 2 days. See, they got a lot more money. It's not usually the way shipping works. Usually you pay for that in advance. Or maybe that was already set that way, but it's a cool example of an if function with a little bit of math in it. It's a great first if. So that's a big deal, learning the if function. It comes up a lot. Shipping rates, it comes up with construction when you're calculating what types of materials to use based on weight load, and there's all kinds of reasons you could use an if function. So you might want to go back and re-watch that if you didn't really get that. Otherwise, let's go to the next step. So in the next step, so we just use the fill handle and fill down. We're done with that now. We're going to do count A, which we did in week 1. It's a very simple function. It just counts how many things, anything in cells, any cells with with anything in them. So let's get over there and do that. So we're over here. I'm going to go into C5, and you know count A, and you don't have to go to the formulas tab to pull this up, even though it's not in the dropdown, because I already taught you this in week 1, the stuff I was going over before. So you can just start typing out equals count, and then you can grab count A here and double click or type count A. And again, this is the one that counts any cell with contents in it, any cell with anything. It's count that counts any cell with data in it. And they're not having you just highlight these cells. You're using a tool called spill. So if you go J10, which would be the beginning of the range, and then put a hashtag in, a number sign off your keyboard should be above the 3, and then close the parenthesis, that will pick up all the way down until the data stops. And then it will count how many have stuff in there, and your answer should be 11. So that was a little bit more complicated than the count we did in week 1 because it was just a range. Now, granted, I don't use the spill tool very much. It's been around for a while, J10 spill. That's what the number sign means. But we are doing some stuff this week where we're showing what different characters mean inside of formulas. So the hashtag means spill. The currency symbol inside a formula will prevent a cell reference from changing. We're going to learn that shortly in this case. And as always, as you're doing these steps, if you want to go down and check and reference the answers to make sure you're getting the right stuff, you can. But as I've explained in previous cases, you can't just type an 11 in there. Sam is going to check to see what you put in there. Okay, let's pick it up here a little bit. We're going to get into the next step. So this is going to involve some nesting. So nesting means you're going to put a function inside of another function. Now, this could just as easily be done by just simply adjusting the decimal places with the decreased decimal that we learned last week. But if you're working in an office setting and you just want it to automatically work so people don't have to worry about doing that, or you don't want to have to worry about fixing it later, this is another way to do it. You can use the round function. And there's round and round up and round down, and you can choose how many decimals you want to round to. And it's like a decrease or increase decimal function. So the first thing we're going to do is actually the average. This is how I like to do nesting functions. And I've seen other teachers and professors teaching it this way on YouTube and stuff. I think it is the best way to learn. So do the average function that you want. So go to C6, and you're going to average the range F10 to F36. So go to C6, average is here. You can pull it up from here, just type it in. You have to be careful because it'll always pick up anything near it with numbers. And you just simply, with that already highlighted over, you simply pick up the range you want, which is F10 to F36. And then you hit enter, and you have this average function, and obviously with a lot of decimals. And then what you're going to do is take what you just made and put it inside of a round function. So, and there's not a whole lot to this. Go into the formula bar, highlight the average function, right click and cut it. And if you happen to pick up the equal sign, you can just get rid of it when you go put the round. And then immediately go and type in your round function. And they want you to use round up. Okay, and that would be under mathematical, I believe, if you went to the formulas tab, but you don't need to do that. I showed you the easy way. Just type the function in, it'll autocomplete, click it, you get the parenthesis. And now this is not a one input function. So immediately, the only one input functions are literally just average, min, max, sum, and any count function, unless it's count if, like those aren't one inputs either. So go in here, and your number is going to be the answer that you just did. And you're going to paste that in. So that was still on my clipboard. Remember when I cut that? So now I just paste the function I made in there. This is very simple. You could also just type it right in. Whenever I teach students nesting, I want them to be in the habit of doing it that way from the get-go, because you can end up nesting some stuff that's fairly large. And you're going to round to 0 decimal places. So you put a 0 there, and that's your answer. And then you click OK. And it should end up being 5 even. And this is what you should have in the formula bar. Okay, so we could have just reduced the decimals by hitting the reduce decimal. But there was a lot of decimals, so, it's arguable which was faster. But that's a really good example to learn nesting with because it's fairly simple. And nesting, again, means we have a function inside a function. Okay, here are some ones that we know how to do very well. I'll quickly go through these. In cell C7, we're going to do the max of F10 to F36. So C7, and if you don't want to pull it up from here, because every time you do that, it's going to pick up the other stuff around it, but then you don't have to type anything in, which is why it's probably, and same range, F10 to F36. It's probably faster to do it that way. And that should come up as 10. Then go to G5, and we're going to do a min function for that same range. So the least amount of shipping days, time spent in transit. So G5, we'll type this one out because I was just talking about the difference between the two. So you type it out, you start your parenthesis, you grab the range, you hit enter. I mean, I don't think it's any slower really. Enter, and that should turn out to be 1. And it's really just a preference thing, whether or not you use the quick drop for min and max, average, that's the stuff. Now we're moving on to a lookup function. So save your file, and this will be a new chapter in the video because I'm going to explain how lookup functions work, because there's XLOOKUP, VLOOKUP, HLOOKUP, there's all kinds of different lookups. XLOOKUP is one that's being used more often now. It's fairly new in Excel. What you're doing with the lookup function, whether it's X, vertical, horizontal, X, is you're in a cell. Which cell are we in? G6. So in G6, we're going to use a lookup function. And if you type out lookup, you could see these different lookups that we have. And the lookup function, the idea behind it is that you're locating, there's something you're going to look up somewhere else. So I'll show you in the context of this question, actually, this step on the case, because it's actually a good one to learn this with. So it says use the minimum number of days in transit in G5 as the thing you're going to try and find. Now, typically when you're doing a lookup function, the thing you're looking for is usually right above it, to the left of it, right to the side of it. It's usually really close to it. So I'm going to pull up the lookup function now, and as I'm putting in each thing, I'm going to take some more time to explain it. So if it's frustrating to you that I don't just give you the stuff to put in the boxes, tough, because you need to learn what the stuff in the boxes is actually having done to it. You can't just, this is not a course where you just learn where to put stuff in boxes and then think you're going to, because when you get examples like this on the test, they won't be the same numbers. They won't be the same references. So we're going to go for X lookup. Now, if you wanted to pull that from the formulas tab, that would be in lookup and reference, obviously. And there's a bunch of different stuff in there. I don't need to keep going to the formulas tab because I know it's just as easy to type it out. It auto completes it. As soon as I have my parenthesis, I hit the FX. So this one's got a bunch of fields. And as you sit in each of the fields, it tells you what it, I love this explanation. That's actually different than it used to be in Excel 2016. I think 2019 it still had. So lookup is the value to search for. So this is the thing you're looking for, and it is this. So you simply pick that. You can type it in too, G5. Now, often when you're doing lookups, you have to scroll them. So that is a thing that you would want to lock up so it doesn't change. But we're going to do that in the context of some other steps in the case. So I'm going to show you absolute referencing. So put G5 in there, and you're going to look that up and try and find that somewhere else in this collection of data. And usually it's a table full of data. So you're going to try and find every instance of that happening in this, just the column with the data in there. So F10 to F36. So the lookup, so make sure you click to the next box. If you don't, then you're going to be adding the range to that thing in there. So your lookup array is, once again, that same range, F10 to F36. Don't pick up an extra one or we'll mark it wrong. And once you find anybody in that range that did a 1, you're going to return who that person is. And the answer to that is in another column in the table. So that's why X lookup is cool, because you can look up, you can look something up and have the return from a separate location. So it's a little bit different than the horizontal and the vertical. So B10 to B36 is where you'll find the shipper names. So B10 to B36. And essentially, like one of our other professors, Dan Woodward, always teaches this in the sense that it's like a phone book. You have someone's last name. and someone's last name will start with a letter. Let's pretend for the case of this, that's in G5. And then down in the phone book, you're going to look up in that section of the book, which is F10 to F36. That's the section of the book that starts with the letter W. Let's pretend it's Woodward, until you find his name, and then you're going to return that once it's found. Okay, that's how a lookup, it's like a phone book. That's the best analogy for a lookup function in Excel. The other thing I like about XLOOKUP is it gives you the option to have text returned if it can't find a shipper name. And that would come in the form of not found. And as I mentioned when we were doing the if function, when we start to use these functions that are more query-based, logical testing, look it up type of functions, whenever we have text being returned instead of a number or a cell or something that's in a cell. If you're returning a cell with text in it, that's fine. You can just put the cell in there. But if it's straight up text, you have to put it in quotes, regular quotes, like if you're doing a quotation in a document or something. And then your match mode is specify how to match the lookup against the values in the lookup array. And you automatically, if you put 0, it has to be an exact match, okay? If you want it to be a range, well, you'd probably be using another version of a lookup function because you can look it up within a range or it can be an exact match. So 0 will make it an exact match, and that's everything you should have within this lookup function. So if we go back here, did they ask anything about absolute referencing? Nothing like that. So that's it. So you're doing a simple lookup function that doesn't have to be scrolled down or across, in which case all of this stuff would have to be absolute. And you'd have to absolute, which is, we haven't learned yet, but that's where you put the $ signs in there to make sure it doesn't change. This is a single cell function, so you can simply click OK, and it should show ExpressNet as the preferred shipper because they came up the most often. Yeah, and then you can go down and compare in the context of the answers. Pretty cool. Moving on to the next step, which is the simplest step on the case. How did I get way down there? Number 8. Let's do a today function. Now, pay attention. Always pay attention to your instructions. Some cases start with just a documentation sheet and one working worksheet. This one has an additional worksheet. Some of them have like 6 or 7 or 8. So we are moving on to the next worksheet. And you'd notice that right away because you'd go to B2 on this worksheet and you'd be like, hey, I'm not being told to adjust the column or anything here. Why am I? So make sure you go to the sales analysis worksheet now. So we are switching worksheets for the first time in the case. Save your file one more time. Just always be saving. Keep saving. Oh, cool. I'm actually in B2. I don't know if I did that when I opened the file before. So I'm already in B2, which is where I need to be. And you're going to insert a function that will insert the current date from your computer. So like the system date. So you don't actually put a date in here at all. You insert the function today. And I can type it out simply by typing today. And this is a no input function. This is really cool. It's the easiest step on the whole case. All you do is type today, start your parenthesis, and hit enter. And you have successfully input the date from the system, which is probably going to be very different than the date that you're seeing in my video. Even if you're watching this in fall 25, you're probably not doing this on the same exact day. And you could be watching this 2 or 3 years from now, and the date will be different. But don't worry about that. Sam is just checking to see that you use the function. And there's a bunch of stuff. If you go under Formulas tab, there's a bunch of them. Like this inserts the day of the month. Time now inserts the current date and time. Today is the date. Time is just the time. The minute. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can do in there. Date itself is from Excel's date functioning. I don't usually use that one. And the today function puts in today's date. As you're looking at this, if it looks different than mine, do not worry about it. I know there was a whole thing last week with people like trying to type the date in the way it was in the step because that's how they thought they should do it. But that's not what the instructions said. The instructions said there is a date in this cell. You are going to format it. And there was a way last week, no matter whether you had your language settings changed or not yet, to get it formatted correctly. This, it doesn't matter how it's formatted. And most of the time when Sam gives you functions, if you happen to carry over some formatting, there's a step coming up where you do have to deal with some formatting, but not here. So you just, let's say you have the day first and it's the day, month, year, or you have month, day, year, or it's showing you dashes instead of slashes. I talked about that at the beginning. Just ignore that. As long as you're using the today function, the date that appears just happens to be in the default format that your computer decided to put it in, and that's fine. If there's date formatting, I will show you how to do that specifically in other steps, but here there is not. So you need to ignore that, the way the date is formatted, whether it's got slashes, dates, the years in another position, whatever. All you do is put in the today function and you are done with that step and you can move on to the next one. That's it. So the next step, and I showed you some other cool options there for date related functions. This step's a little bit annoying because I'm going to show you something really cool you can do if you're on Windows, but if you're on a Mac, you can't do it. So I'll show the Windows way first because yes, you could do this by just auto summing and Sam wouldn't know the difference, but it wants you to have some special formatting carried over. And when you use the quick analysis tool, it sees formatting in other totals and knows that it wants you to format these totals the same way. You also have currency symbol here, currency symbol taken out here. So this is standard accounting and it wants you to keep it the same way the whole time. So if you want to use the quick analysis tool to create sums or do formats to certain ranges or whatever, you highlight the range first. You don't actually have to be in the cells where it's going to go. And this is a tool that can save you a lot of time if you have like a robust sort of sheet with a lot of data in it. It's pretty neat, and there are some benefits to it. And you can YouTube some videos on it. I'm not going to add one to the playlist. I don't think it's necessary, but it's just if you have a lot of data, it can be very helpful. And we want to sum some stuff up. So we're going to go to totals. And it's important to note that if you're using the quick analysis tool and you use the default one here, it's going to try and put everything underneath the range you're highlighting. But this is a situation where we can see we want everything to the right, which is the one over here. And when we do that, you can also see that it made all the totals bold and kept the same number format going across of the other options. And then you just click it and you're done. So you don't have to do a bunch of auto sums and do formatting, but you do if you're on a Mac, and I'm sorry for that. So for the PC users, that is the step. Highlight that chunk of data, go into the quick analysis tool. It'll take you first to formatting, go to totals, and then click right here, and you're done. You'll have a quiz question like that too. It's pretty neat. If you're on a Mac, I'm going to show you how to do it on a Mac. And you'll see that I still get this right when I submit my file at the end, even though I'm undoing what I just did with the quick analysis tool. So I'm going to click undo. And if you're on a Mac, here's what you do. And it explains what to do. So those were the instructions I just did for the PC, which is use the quick analysis tool and put those totals in. It just formats everything for you. In cell F5 on a Mac, do a sum function. Okay? This is for the range B5 to E5. So if you just sit here and use AutoSum, we can just go to the Home tab, AutoSum. It should pick up those four cells, B5 to E5, hit Enter. And you can see it's got the currency symbol to the left. If you just scroll straight through now and you don't make a comment to Excel, or you don't tell Excel that you don't want to copy the formatting, you just want the formulas copied, everything is going to have the currency symbol. So that's not what you want. So now it says fill it down to F9, but without formatting, which is something we will do more in other cases on both PC and Mac, but I'm teaching it to all of you now just so you know how easy this is. So if you fill something all the way down, and you don't want to lose your borders either. See how your borders are there? The accounting, that's like total cell style actually. Those are gone now that you filled through. And like you have currency symbols on everything, but these don't. What you need to do, as soon as you fill something, every time you do this, this little thing's going to come up. And you have the option to fill without formatting, and that's all you need to do. And then this one was already made bold. These were already like that. But what's cool about the quick analysis tool is it knew to make all the totals bold. It doesn't know to do that here. So then you got to go back to F5 to F8, and you got to make them bold. And then on a Mac, you've successfully manually done everything the quick analysis tool did in a shorter amount of time for the PC users. And I'm sorry you had to deal with that, but it taught those of you on a PC a little bit more about how that thing was working too, the quick analysis tool. And that's it for step 9. Now we're going to do another nesting thing for number 10 that's similar to number 4, where we have a mathematical formula inside of another function. So, and I'll show you what happens and why we're doing this. So what we're going to do here is we're going to divide F5 by F9. Okay, so equals F5 divided by F9. And you can see there's numbers in both, and you're going to get a percentage here, and it's already formatted for percent, which is great. And that looks fine. I don't know why we need to bother doing an if error. So what an if error does is, in case there's an error here, you can customize the message of the error. I'll show you what it would look like if there was an error there. Like, let's just delete F9 and have no number in there. It gives you this div, hashtag div divided by nothing with an exclamation mark, which you can probably figure out what that means by staring at it. You're trying to divide it into nothing. It's not working. And they want somebody to know, like, if they make a mistake here, there's actually an error. So I'm going to undo that really quick. Don't start removing stuff. I'm just showing you examples. So you're going to put this mathematical formula you made inside of a function. So you can cut it just like I did with the other one. I know this is a very small math problem to cut. And then type if error and double click it and pull the function wizard up. And inside of if error, you paste the function. And if you paste the equal sign with it, you'll see you get no answer. So you got to make sure you don't carry that equal sign over. Now, that you could have just typed that in. I mean, you could have just pulled up if error and typed right in. But I told you already when we did our first nesting function, I'm in the habit of teaching students when you're nesting, build the one that's inside the other function first. And if there's nest in and nest in and nest, you start at the bottom and you go outwards. It's just easier that way. And now you can customize your message. And they just want you to use the word error. And I've been teaching you whenever you have text in fields like this, in the functions we're learning in week 3, you need to put quotes around the text. But a neat thing that Excel will do for you is if you put text in there, it'll probably know that you need quotes around it and just put them in for you. On a SAM quiz, it might make you put them in, but for that one, it didn't. So now watch what happens. If I remove that one in week 9 that it's trying to divide into, now it actually says the word error. Okay, and you could even go into that function and you could have it say whatever you wanted. You could have it say like, hey dummy, you need a total in F9, and it will say that. Until, of course, you put the total back in F9. So you're not supposed to actually see the error message because the total was already in F9, which makes the step even a little more tricky in the sense that you're doing something that looks exactly the same as if this was just in there. But that's what most if error messages are like until somebody actually makes an error. Okay, so that's that step. I don't think we're done yet. I think we have to copy down. Yes, and now we're going to learn absolute referencing. And this is a perfect time to learn this because it's a simple formula. So in the context of this formula, we want it to work all the way through here. And if you were to just see this right now, if you were to just scroll right down, and I'm going to undo this as soon as I do it. If you were just to scroll right through, you would actually get the errors. And the reason you're getting the errors is because as soon as you scroll any function or formula, you guys already know this, Excel is going to be really nice and update all the cell references for you. So if we click on this one, now it says F10, F11, F12. I'm going to undo that because there are situations where you're making a cell reference to something that doesn't change. You don't want it to change. So all these references you've been making up to this point in week 3 are just normal or standard, what they call relative cell references. So when Sam in the quiz says, I want you to do this with relative cell references, they're just checking to make sure you understand the definition of that that's just referencing the cell you learn how to do in week 1. Just click on the cell and it's referenced. If you need to make a cell stay the same, which is what we need with F9, you can do this by using absolute referencing, which is actually quite simple. All you have to do is use the currency symbol on your keyboard and just type it right in front of the column letter and the row number. And that's it. And now when I hit enter, that looks exactly the same still. But when I scroll down, I don't get an error because it stays F9 the whole time. And there I would also, I don't know, does it say fill without formatting? Yeah, fill without formatting. Again, use the fill handle, go down to 9 and fill without formatting because you don't want to lose your borders. And it'll mark you wrong if you don't do that. You got to watch that because this is a total cell style, I think, like that we learned last week. And as soon as you're done, it'll have that there every time, and you can fill without formatting. And then you get the right format. So that was step 11. And absolute referencing is really important. You're locking up the cell reference. So this is a big deal to understand that if you need a cell reference to stay the same, all you have to do is put those currency symbols in there. There is a keyboard shortcut to do that. Anything you want to make absolute, if you highlight it and hit F4 on your keyboard, it'll put them in for you. But not everybody has the function keys, so I don't want to over teach that. I already brought up the F2 key earlier in the video about, renaming a file. So that's absolute referencing, and I hope you can understand why that couldn't change, because each one of these is dividing into this same one. So as you started scrolling past there, these were just empty cells, right? And that's why it didn't work. That's why you needed the absolute referencing. And that's a big skill to understand, and it's very easy to do. Latrice set a goal for the current year of increasing sales revenue by 2.5% over the last year. Enter the revenue goals as follows. In I5, enter a formula without using a function that multiplies footwear revenue for the previous year, and they always give you the cell, H5, by the target increase price, B11, and then adds. So order of operations, right? Multiplication first. You don't need parentheses here. You don't need to do algebra. Well, technically that is algebra, but you don't need the parentheses as long as the order of operations is correct. So it's always going to do multiplication first. Now, you won't get it wrong if you put the parentheses in, and maybe that's a best practice, just visually for yourself to see the algebra done correctly, but it's not a necessity in terms of standard algebra. So multiply H5 by B11 and then add H5. So, and we're doing this in I5. So I5, so H5 times B11, H5. And you can pick it up, you don't have to, whatever. These are simple enough, you can cut it in, then plus H5. So what I'm talking about when I talk about algebra, as you can see here, if you add these parentheses in there, that's more the way like your elementary school teachers would want to see you do it, just so you know the order of operations and how it's taking place. But if you took the parentheses out, which is fine, and you don't want to do more than you need to, it calculates to the same number because the order of operations will automatically be done by Excel for you correctly. Use an absolute reference to B11 in the formula. And this makes sense because if we go and look at what's in B11, that's your price increase. I'm not going to scroll down and then zoom past this and get into all these cells with nothing and then other numbers in there. So I go to B11, I put in the currency symbol, and this has nothing to do with formatting your currency. You have officially become a coder. So when you used the hashtag for the spill and that previous step earlier in the case, and now you're using currency symbols for absolute referencing, you're coding just a little bit. And now when I scroll down, I go right to 9, and again, I fill without formatting. Okay? So this is a pretty involved video because I had that 20 minutes of extra crap at the beginning too, but you could finish this a lot more quickly than I'm teaching it because I'm teaching you things like absolute referencing and how lookup functions work and how if functions work as I'm introducing these functions. As soon as you understand how all this stuff works, this is actually shorter than last week, I think. So use the fill handle, fill without formatting. We're on to number 12. Number 12, she also wants to display the difference between the goal amount and the total revenue for the year, rounded to the nearest whole number. So round up or round down involve, well, it's the direction in which you're rounding. This is just a straight up round function. So in J5, enter a formula using the round function that subtracts the goal amount, cell I5, from this year's total revenue, F5, and rounds to 0. So you know how the round function had the two inputs? The round up. This will be the same way. So we're going to go to J5, and we're going to go equals round, start our parenthesis. I think that's under statistical if you wanted to find it in the categories there, or it might just be under math and trig, actually. And your number is not just a single number or a single cell reference. It's a calculation, which is fine. And the calculation is you're taking the goal amount from this year's total revenue. So read that out loud. I5 from F5. That means you're going to go F5 minus I5. Everyone always does it backwards, and then they're sitting there staring at it trying to figure out why it's not working. Round to 0. Click OK. You should have 531 bucks. Just to make sure you put it in the right order, you can scroll down here. I see 531 for sure. Zoom in a little bit there. Once you do the first cell, I'm sure you're going to scroll down. Again, use the fill handle. No absolute referencing here. Just fill without formatting. Okay. Scroll through to 9. Fill without formatting. Now, the reason, again, you keep doing that is because you don't want to lose your total cell format or the formats that were already preset in there, so you didn't have the currency symbol anywhere but the top and the bottom figures, which is standard accounting format. You can see there was a bit of a rough year there, or rough category last year. Training equipment. Apparently people have already trained enough and they're just using all the other stuff. Whatever. I like that these cases always demonstrate somewhat of a real world perspective on things. Latrice wants to project sales for player equipment for the next 4 years using increases of a range of percentages. Use the values in B14 to C14 to extend the percentages to the range D14 to F14 in increments of 2. So this sounds like somebody's going to go here and like look at this and then stare at it and have to figure out and then type. Don't do that. So this is a really cool tool as well. When you copy down, as you've done with so many times with formulas, you just copy one cell and it copies what's in the cell. If you have a series going, and I'll do something down here just to show you, this doesn't just work with numbers. Like if I type Jan and it's a word, Excel is probably going to recognize that that's probably months. So Excel will fill series and it will fill days of the week, months. But if it's numbers, it's not just going to work just off one. But if you highlight more than one and it recognizes an incremental increase, I use this all the time. It will then autofill the rest for you. And do we have to fill without formatting? I don't think you do because the formatting didn't change. No fill without formatting. See how I did that? It's a really neat little trick. So if you copy just from the 2, it's just a straight up number. It's just going to put a bunch of 2s in there. If you highlight the 2 and 4 and then copy from the 4, it knows. Now, that's one of those steps too. If you can't use the mouse very well and you're having trouble with that, you could just type in 6, 8, and 10%, and Sam's not going to know the difference, and it'll still mark it right. But I still think it's easier to do it the way it's asking you to do it. Almost done here. We're getting close to the end. So calculate yearly projections as follows. So lots of calculations in here, lots of new functions. But is any of this like brain busting stuff? Like, I don't really think so. You're going to want to go back and review if and lookup before the test for sure. And I'll have a test review video that'll give you some breadcrumbs and some hints and stuff. But it's just a matter of knowing this stuff is there and knowing where to put the stuff. So we're going to go to B16 now, and we're going to use just basic math again, not using a function. So B16 is here, and we're going to enter a formula that multiplies sales for the current year by the first potential percentage range and then adds the current year value to it. So you're basically calculating the increase and then adding it to what they made that year. Okay, so B15 times B14 plus B15. Same thing we did above, actually, very similar. Equals B15 times B14 plus B15 again, and that's it. Hit enter. You should have an extra 900 bucks if it does increase by 2%. And if you scroll down, you can check that's correct. 45,900. Now, from there, go back up. You are going to use a mixed reference to cell B14 in this formula by including an absolute reference to row 14. Okay, so this is cool. So I didn't bring this up yet because I knew it was coming in the case. So what we have here is a pretty simple function, and you can see that we're referencing B15, and when we scroll over, we're gonna want to hit C15, D15. So that's not going to be absolute. But if we look here, you can see that we want that to not go down. We don't want to leave this position and not keep using the 2%. However, we do want to scroll over, which means you only need the column to be absolute. So you can actually do mixed references where part of it's relative and part of it's absolute. So they want a mixed reference to B14 where absolute is row 14. So go back in there and just go in front of 14 and put a dollar sign. You just don't put it in front of the B. Generally speaking, with most situations where you need absolute referencing, you're putting it in front of both just to lock up the cell, but you don't want to lock up the column here. You only want to lock up the row. So now, if you use the fill handle to go to fill B17 to 19, so let's do that one first. So B17 to 19, you can see it just keeps compounding right on itself, and you wanted those to scroll through. You see how simple that is? So you're referencing the number here and then by 2%, and then this one goes to the one right above it, 2%, right above it, 2%, right above it, 2%. But when you scroll over, you just want the new percentage. You don't want anything else changing. So that's where that absolute comes in. So then you can use the fill handle, C16 to 19, then the range C16 to 19 with the formula in cell B16. So C16 to 9, I mean, you could just go like this. There's a couple different ways to do it. And those numbers should be identical. Or you could scroll over there and then take those 4 and go down. Either one will work out the same way. So it said B16. So what they want you to do is probably this. They want you to go like this. And then they want you to take those and go like that. You still have the same numbers, for sure. Because the same thing's absolute the whole time. Let me see the last one, 65, 85, 46, 800. Yeah, same numbers. And no formatting concerns there, which leads us to our final step. So that was a cool step. That was a really good example of when you might only need one part of it absolute. And you need only one part of it absolute because you still wanted the column to shift, just not the row. The range A13 to I17 includes sales projections for a new product, a headset for coaches. Latrice wants to know how many headsets the company needs to sell to reach sales of $250,000, so 250,000. So this is a really cool tool. This will probably be on the quiz too. I'm almost certain I put a goal seek question on there. This is a projection tool, and I love that this is coming up in week 3. And the reason this is grayed out is because Sam can't actually tell if you used goal seek or not. But they will. Oh no, that's the report date. That's grayed out because that's grayed out because the date's going to be different. I already talked about that. Why is goal seek not gray? Wow, they usually grayed out they gray out the goal seek. They're actually giving you the answer. So there's no possible way you'd get this right if you just typed it in. I swear. Or is it grayed out on the? Are we going back to the first sheet? No. Where are we? Here. So goal seek we're doing in H13 I13. Use to set sales in I17 to 250. Yeah, so they're not graying out I17 by change I14. So I14, if you look at I14 right now, it says 192. And if you look at I14 in the answer, it says 245. Now, I'm shocked that they did that because I'm not going to tell you why. Just do what I'm going to do, and then I'll tell you why after. First, do this with me. So, sitting anywhere. You could be in a cell with nothing in it. It doesn't matter. You're going to go to Data tab, all the way over here to What If Analysis, and pull up Goal Seek. And this is really simple. So I don't want to over-explain it. You can just keep re-watching me do it this one time. It did pick up the cell I'm sitting in. It doesn't matter what cell you're sitting in. You're going to tell it what to set. So what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, is you're trying to get sales up to 250,000. So I-17 is going to be set. See, set to 250,000. So you set I-17, just type it in there. You can click on it too. To 250,000, 250,000, by altering how many units you need to sell here. So it will just do the statistical math for you in the background without you having to do it. And you can click on the cell too. You don't have to, and when you click on it, it makes it absolute automatically. You don't need to put the absolute in there. It'll still work fine if you type them in. But tools like this always by default are making things absolute, as I talked about that in a previous case. And when you click OK, watch cell I-14. It's going to go like, well, it's not going to make that cool noise I just made, but it's going to calculate and it's going to figure out, oh, I had it over it. And I'm going to cancel that because I wanted you to actually see it. Here, let's do it one more time. Goal seek. And I'm going to move the box up here. So you're setting I-17, right? Where is I-17? I-17. You're going to set to 250,000 by changing what is in I-14. I'm just going to type it in. Now watch over here when I do this. See that? So it just runs the statistical math and figures out, without you having to do stats, how much that would require. What I was surprised about was that they actually showed, like, it's fine that they showed this cell, but previously in SAM cases where we do goal seek, they gray out, they like cloud out that cell so you don't know what the actual answer is. This, you could just type those numbers in there and SAM would actually mark it right, because goal seek is one of those neat tools, but SAM can't check whether or not you did it, okay? So that's it. We are finally done. I've saved a lot, but let's say I accidentally forget to save at the end, but I go to close my file, it will make me save it. And this is why I'm always telling you, it's even more important to remember to close your file. Now, that was a pretty long case, so there's a chance I may have timed out here. I think it's 90 minutes. I don't think we quite took that long. So let's see when I go, yep, I have, no, it's working. I haven't timed out yet. So I'm going to go here, I'm going to upload, and I'm expecting 100. We will see how we do. Submission, grades that quickly. Grab your summary report. Throw that into downloads, and you can keep those too. I was showing you how to get your reports after the fact later. You can just keep them on a memory stick if you want to go back to the files without even having to log into MindTap, and then go to SAM. Open it up, moment of truth. And there you go. So that full demonstration provided to you every single step on the case with a lot of explaining and teaching you what you're doing and how it's all working. And each step you've seen recorded in this video, if you do it the same way, will earn you 100% as well. So that wraps it up. And as you now have seen, some of the stuff we covered in here, yes, a little bit more difficult with some advanced functions, and we were nesting functions and functions. And we learned about absolute versus relative referencing. And within those advanced functions, we did a lot of stuff where we're looking things up and testing things, and that goal seek at the end, I think, is a very cool tool as well. And next week, we're going to get into charts. I will see you in the next video.